to the 15th BCH Dev Meeting of the year 2019. I'm your host, David Oro, and I'm going to ask that we introduce ourselves, starting from my top left, Omri Sachet.
I'm Omri Sachet, I'm the lead dev of Bitcoin ABC.
Thank you, Omri. Next, we have Anthony Zegers.
Hi, I'm Anthony Zegers, also known as Mangarian online. I do Bitcoin ABC and various random Bitcoin Cash stuff.
Thank you, Anthony. Emil Oldenburg?
Yes, so my name is Emil Oldenburg. I'm the CTO of Bitcoin.com, represent Bitcoin.com, especially the mining pool and our wallets here.
All right, thank you, Emil. Next on my right is Mark Lundeberg.
I am Mark Lundeberg. I'm a Bitcoin Cash developer working on, for purposes of this meeting, the past two consensus upgrades. So the May one and the upcoming November one. I guess the current and past two.
Lots of clarity there. Thank you, Mark. Moving on to Josh Ellithorpe.
Hey, I'm Josh Ellithorpe. I'm Bitcoin Cash developer. I work on BCHD and Cash Shuffle, and also focusing on Cash Fusion, which is a newer project.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Next, I have Andrea Susani.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andrea Susani, Bitcoin Cash developer working on BU. Bitcoin.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And finally, on our panel tonight, we have Tyler Smith.
Hi, I'm Tyler Smith. I've been doing development for Bitcoin Cash stuff, lately doing some BCHD stuff and a lot of stuff with Avalanche.
Sorry, Tyler, your mic was not terribly loud. I wonder if you could just give us the last part again.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just said I've been doing some stuff with BCHD and I've been doing a lot of work with Avalanche lately.
Okay, Avalanche, great, thank you. All right, everybody has had a chance to look at the agenda, but I'm going to just go through what we're going to be discussing today, and then we can begin the discussion. So the first item on the agenda is going to be the discussion of the network and mempool behavior. We're going to touch on the 25 unconfirmed transaction limit, BU's latest release, and some of the other considerations that this raises for the rest of the ecosystem. So that's the first item. The second item will be double spend proofs, work that's being done on these. Next item will be the next item the next upgrade potential items, and going through some of these things to discuss their desirability and feasibility. That includes SIGOPS counting improvements, Merkle's tree, new opcodes, MUL, reverse oprol, and bigger integers. Next item will be Avalanche discussion with the progress from Tyler. And then we'll ask the panelists if there's any other topics they wish to raise, and then questions from the audience. Just so that the people in the audience are aware, if at any point you do have a question or item that you would like to put forward, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And then we'll get to you during the period where we accept the questions from the audience and people get a chance to talk about it. So with no further ado, I think we will start with the discussion of the network and mempool behavior. And who would like to start that off?
Guess that it's my turn. So, well, briefly, BU developed a mechanism and implemented a mechanism that improves the efficiency of the code that deal with chains of unconfirmed transaction in the mempool. The performance gain, according to our test, is more or less 2 order of magnitudes without any substantial performance hit in the performance of the node. Having said that, we released 1.7 with this code in it, but we didn't change any mempool policy acceptance. So we have the same policy that ABC and all other implementation have. So we are planning, though, to test to test this new capability before changing anything in a production deployment. So we thought to split the test in two phases. In the first phase, we are not going to involve any miners or any hash power to produce block which contains chain longer than what is the default today. And we are going to test the implication had in some nodes with different kind of policy, namely setting chain of a confirmed transaction longer than 25, and see and evaluate the probability of double spending transaction due to this divergence in network policy across the network. In the second phase, we are going to try to involve miners that they are going to participate, trying to produce block with this new policy deployed. And of course, we're going to evaluate again the success rate for attacker that try to double spend the transaction. For mitigate what has been called a reverse spend attack that has been mentioned by Mark and also imaginary username, we are going to modify the restrict the acceptance policy for any transaction that is 26 or higher in the chain of unconfirmed transactions, so that any transaction that fit this definition is going to accept just one output. It's going to spend just one output. This is actually stricter than what we actually need to mitigate this kind of attack, but it's the easier way. It's the easier way to deploy a mitigation technique for this kind of attack. The rest of spend attack, I glossed over the definition, didn't give the definition, but if people are interested, we could dive in later on. Having said that, we have also ported just for testing purposes, because we are going to test with a mixed variety of clients the code to ABC. Actually, Peter Schiffer did it with also the unit test that came with it. We have it published the code on Peter personal repository. I have the URL for the work, and it would be great if ABC could have a look and evaluate, and eventually even cherry pick the change for overall ABC. So yeah, basically this is the thing that we think about this new policy and how to evaluate the path toward increasing the length of unconfirmed transaction chain for BCH.
Thank you, Andrea. Do you have any questions for Andrea regarding his presentation?
Yeah. Is there a specification of how that things work anywhere?
The specification, no, we just increased the transaction. Do you mean an actual description of the algorithm that we implemented?
Yes.
No, it's in the code comments. There is this actual reasoning behind the algorithm. We have a document that lists the tests that we did that compare previous code that is more or less the same that ABC has right now. At least this is the last time that I looked, but no actual specification because of the way we think to deploy the change if we are going to have it to deploy it on the network. Yeah, it means we are going to test it before. It's not that we have changed the policies on the mainnet right now.
Yeah, but tests are not always sufficient. right? Like you cannot retest for security, for instance.
Yes, of course. I didn't say that we are not going to provide a specification. We just have the plan to do the tests as a first step.
Any further questions for Andrea?
So this is just kind of a high level question. I know that there's differing opinions about child pays for parent, and that definitely has a role to play in the change transaction limit. So I'm kind of curious as to what the feeling is with BU about what features in child pays for parent are necessary, or what depth is required to be supported, and just kind of your thoughts around that.
Well, actually, before these changes, we didn't have children pay for parent in BU. We currently have it now that we have these code changes merged in the last release. Speaking of length of unconfirmed transaction chain, we have tested the performance heat in terms of you have tested the amount of time taken by the software to deal with longer and longer chain, and we basically saw no change at all until 2,500 transactions. We didn't bother to test higher than that, but I guess that the limit would be something determined by the use cases. I mean, Satoshi dies or whatever other services that is going to use it. What we know is that until 2.5K transaction chains of unconfirmed transaction, we are okay. We aim probably even further.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I guess, well, first of all, so like the testing you're talking about, what is, like I guess I'm curious. It seems like there's a few different things being talked about, because you mentioned, like I've only kind of heard this through Reddit posts and stuff like that, so I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, but there's something about, like you mentioned, if the chain is longer than 25, then there's some kind of new rule about.
There is basically the reason the fact that imaginary username and I think even Mark Longbird, but I guess that Google confirmed, have defined, which is that you could have you could spend, let's say that we have two outputs, output A and output B. Output A has 25 ancestors and will be accepted by all the transaction that spend its output will be accepted by all clients in the network. Okay, then we're going to spend output B that hasn't any ancestors, like it's confirmed. It's never spent. The transaction spent is buried in the blockchain. So the attack will spend two transactions. One which spend A and B, and another one, transaction 2, we spend only B. That the first one will be accepted by BU because it will be on a chain which is that is longer than 25 once we deploy the new policy, whereas on the transaction 2 will be accepted by ABC or whatever nodes that doesn't implement the changes, and the transaction 1 won't be accepted by ABC. It means that we have partition at the network, basically. So, and this is what they call reverse suspend attack. To mitigate this, we're going to we're going to allow chain longer than 25, but we are the constraint that will be that from the 26 and on transaction, we only accept transactions that spend only one output. In the example that I gave, that means that transaction 2 couldn't exist, it couldn't be accepted because we are going to accept only transaction that spend one output. And since we said that transaction one had to spend transaction A, output A and output B, it won't be accepted.
Okay, I guess my question's more like overall overall plans, because what you're talking about now is basically if BU goes ahead and changes it by themselves and ABC doesn't. But then you also said that you have code for ABC to implement this also.
We have the code for ABC because we do interop testing in general before R4. And since we did, we have, Peter said that there wasn't much work to do to have it on ABC. So we thought to port it and make it work with ABC. So to make it, and so that we could test ABC with this new feature in the test that we are doing, not even in the mainnet. Okay, this is the first one. But as I said, the plan is like goes like that. We 1.7, which is the version of VU that support the upcoming upgrade, network upgrade, doesn't change the mempool policies. So there is no, unless someone is going to change it on their own, there's no changing the default. What we are going to do is, as the first phase of the testing process, is changing these parameters for a bunch of nodes that we control and try to double spend against these nodes and see what the probability of success we will have. This is the first two phases of the plan. We're not going to deploy change to the full value without properly assessing the risk of double spending.
So when all these assessments are done, when do you think this could be deployed network-wise? Because like the 25 transaction limit is like one of the most common support tickets that we have for Badger Wallet and the Bitcoin.com wallet, and unconfirmed transactions are really important. So if you have used, for example, local Bitcoin.com, at first we.
So can I interject 1 second, Emil? You say it's very important. However, we tried to contact Satoshi Dice several times. We have no answer, right? And the funding that Bitcoin.com is putting towards solving those kind of issue is ridiculously small. Like it would pay for developer maybe for 1 month every year, right? So considering the amount of work, if nobody else, goes toward it, we can expect a solution within 5 to 10 years, maybe. With the kind of resources we have to go, toward that. And so this behavior from your company is not consistent with the discourse that you have just right now, because you're saying that this is very important, but clearly you are not doing what it takes for that to happen.
Well, actually, we have been talking to several developers on fixing the problem, but we felt that there weren't any interest from ABC side to actually work on it and actually fix it. So
it's not like there is no interest. Like you're freaking lying right now. Okay, we had several meetings and we made it clear that we want to solve that issue. That being said, we just don't have the resources. So if you want that to happen, you need to stop lying right now. You need to stop that it's important for you, to say that it's important for you, and you need to act like it's actually important for you. If you do that, this is going to happen. And if you don't do that, this is not going to happen. It's very simple. Yeah,
so the responses we had gotten from, so Shama was working on it for a while until he felt like he hit a wall where he got no support and actually no feedback at all from ABC. So he has gave up on it. And then at that time we felt like, okay, this is not really going anywhere. And then since Satoshi Dice announced funding, we felt like, okay, well, if Satoshi Dice is funding it, then that's great. But if you want Bitcoin.com to pitch in as well, yeah, we can probably do that. I can't make financial promises on behalf of Roger, but Roger usually is not shy to fix these kind of problems or put up funding for fixing problems like this.
Okay, because here is the problem right now. Not only we don't have the resources to do it, but what's happening is that BU is kind of pushing that stuff without, any consultation with anyone. So what's going to happen is that we're going to spend a needed amount of work and time and attention toward making sure that ZeroConf is not broken, toward making sure that, people don't go hysterical and split the community in half and we don't end up, in a BSV grade kind of fork. And while we are doing that and paying attention to that, there is one thing that we are not doing and that we are not paying attention to, and it's actually fixing the 25 transaction limit. So the behavior that everybody is partaking in right now is bound to create huge division in the community, and it's bound to make sure that the 25 transaction limit is solved later rather than sooner.
Well, if ABC is actually interested in solving it, like in a hurry, then we are very happy to help fund.
But no, it's not going to be done in a hurry.
No,
because
so
we're maintaining a network
felt,
that is worth several $1 billion, and so we're not going to rush out policy changes in a hurry. Plus,
yes,
you need to have an actual rollout plan for that, because this kind of policy change, they weaken ZeroConf if they are not done in some kind of rollout plan, right? So you need to put the stuff out there. You need to have some kind of activation code that is agreed upon by various other parties, such as the people present here. And so we know when it activates, and then we need to contact various market actors to get them to upgrade to a version that is updated, otherwise there is being double spent. And this is a ton of work, and this is not work that I see being done right now.
Yeah, and I lifted this question before, which is why I wanted it to be activated at a hard fork activation time. And the response has always been that, well, this is not important right now, and this is not a priority. So, yeah.
Well, this is not a priority. Yeah, this is true that this is not a priority because we cannot make it a priority with the resources that we have. That's simple as this.
Yeah, but yeah, and the thing is, like, if there's no commitment from ABC to actually follow through and actually activate it, then we'll put up a lot of funding and fix this in some clients for nothing if it never gets activated.
Well, we have no problem activating it. This is like, I don't think that I'm being very clear right now, but this is not something that we want to oppose. This is something that we actually want to happen.
So for timeliness, perhaps you guys can continue that conversation after the meeting. I think it's a very important conversation, but there's a lot to go over. Just to kind of be clear, BCHD doesn't do child pays for parent and currently does not have a limit on transaction chains in our code base. Because we don't support mining nodes right now, well, we technically support them, but no one's using it for that. It doesn't have any danger to the network, but just to be very clear, that's something that we can run with these changes as BU and ABC have solutions available.
Make sure that anybody who wants to get a chance to comment on this can. I don't want to cut the conversation off too short. Anthony, did you want to add anything, or Mark?
I'm curious about just the technical details, because I know there's a particular way that BU has done things. So as I understand it, it's you accept longer chains, and then you also so there's this new rule you mentioned about preventing the double spend attacks, but also there's you rebroadcast the transactions periodically, like every block. When a new block comes in, you try to rebroadcast the long.
We have code for that, which is disabled by default. But
sure, yeah. But that's part of the solution,
yes.
Or okay.
That's part of mitigating the fact that we could have different kind of policy for the network.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so both of those are like mitigations that would be needed if there's different policies across the network. I see.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And then also you mentioned you did tests, but I believe the concern was with the computational complexity, like the big O. You know, what's the CPU exhaustion
Basically,
mechanism
it's
attack there?
O1. O1, like, it's not O1, it's not an actual correct definition, but for all, in a practical way, we have tested till 2.5K length of unconfirmed transaction, and the amount of load and the resource spent on dealing with this longer chain was basically constant. So
Okay. So for each new transaction, no matter how many ancestors it has, it takes about
Yes.
the same time.
yes,
Is that just from the tests, like experimentally, that you measured that, or is that just like in the algorithm that's obvious also?
we I don't know if Peter did all both of the part, but we have measured the actual time on running on the real thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because it sounds like the problem right now comes from something that's a little bit intrinsic to the fact that you want to calculate all of these fancy fee rates. Right, you want to have all these exact fee rates for all these different packages of like different combinations of transactions,
Yes.
different lengths of ancestor chain, and
Yes.
when it's computing all those things, it is just a big computation. So it sounds like it can't be O1 if you really want to do all that. So I'm curious, like, is that maybe not true? Like maybe there is an efficient way to do it that Bitcoin Core just
But
didn't found, or you dropped
no.
some capability, and which capabilities got dropped?
This is, if you want to, we could go in the nitty gritty detail, and then I can involve also Peter, which is the one that came up with the idea. But
Yeah. Maybe we don't have to go all in depth about it right now, but I guess this is why it's good to have a specification that lays out what is
so
like what is the new fee market, let's say, right?
Those
there's always
details
gonna
are
be
important because maybe some of those details, are actually not trade-off that we want to make, or maybe they are, right? But the point is, we don't even have a way to know right now if we actually want.
I guess that you are right. Having a general description of the algorithm is a good idea. But actually, the description of the algorithm is there, and the compromises that have been made as being described in the code, like in the code comment, we could extract it and expand it and whatever. But as I told you before, since these kind of changes are quite almost consensus changes, we wanted to taste it before spending time. It's like someone asking for Avalanche specification before like even testing.
Okay. So you're saying right now it's still very experimental.
The main thing is that we didn't change the behavior of BU for any release that is deployed on the test on the mainnet, which is compatible with the upcoming off-port. So
I guess that is one thing that a lot of people didn't take away, because there were press releases that this is now the new feature, right? But in actuality, it's just an experiment that's happening in the BU code base that's not actually activated by default.
It's not, but I don't recall having read anywhere that we had it deployed and activated on the mainnet. Could be wrong, but yeah, if this is the impression that that went through, I am more than happy to say that this is not the case, that we are going to test it. And anyway, going back to the deployment of this kind of changes, especially if we're not talking about minor, I guess that once you gave the possibility to actors to do their assessment risk of this kind of changes, it's up to them to deploy, to adopt the change, as long as there is a solution for it available. I mean, if I am a business and then I want to have longer chain, there is a possibility to do it. I know what's the risk. I know I have measured it. I have tested it. I'm not going to split the network if I'm going to change it. I'm probably going bankrupt if I'm not going to do properly because I will be double spent or whatever. I won't lose my customers, but it's not a network split, in my opinion, or nobody opinion, I guess. I don't know that anybody is thinking about that this kind of change will lead to a network split for a persistent work.
Yeah, it's a relay rule. It's not a block. It doesn't affect the block acceptance. So
yeah,
it's fine for now. Yeah. Yeah. So I think on a high level, it's good to have a roadmap of what the mempool acceptance rules are going to look like, because just on a high level, we do need some sort of quality of service mechanism. Even if we get rid of the fee market, where sorry, like right now there's this fee market thing where a new transaction can come in and actually evict an old transaction that's already in the mempool simply because the other transaction paid too small of a fee, right? So it's this outbidding process because the mempool is restricted. And maybe that's not something we want, but it's good to have a roadmap of what is that actually going to look like in the future. Like, we do need some mechanism because the mempool is finite. So you either evict transactions or you start rejecting new transactions if there's a flood. So
yeah, I agree. Any kind of behavior or rules that determine that have an influence on the structure of the mempools across clients and across the network will affect unconfirmed transaction, and hence needs to be thought carefully. Yes, indeed. Whatever is the policy, even if we decide to just drop any kind of filter to accept transaction in the mempool, but the mempool size or time to live of a transaction, we need to define all the criteria that we want to enforce in terms of evictions, in terms of acceptance. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just before I finish, I know, Amaury, you have some ideas about like what you would like to see as the mempool policy. So I don't know if everybody is aware of what that looks like. Like, you don't have a specification, but you have a sort of a rough sketch, right? So maybe that would be helpful if you don't have to go into all the detail now, but if you could share that with everybody, and we all know what we can discuss it, and we see if maybe there's some actually bad ideas in there. I don't know. Somebody smart will point out something.
I think Anthony wanted to write something about that, but more generally, so we want zeroconf to be secure, right? And if we want that to happen, we actually need to make sure that we don't evict from the mempool, which we do right now. And so that's not that's the way things are working right now is not ideal. But because the mempool is finite, you don't want to be in a situation where you accept everything and then at some point you accept nothing. That's just, it's
people can also denial of service attack then.
Like it opened yourself to a bunch of stuff, and we don't see that many floods right now because the effect of them is not that bad, but we should expect that if we change the behavior in a way that it gets worse when we flood, such as we don't accept any more transaction, then then in that case, we should expect people to do it, right? Because it would have more effect. The cost benefit for an attacker is better. So we don't want to evict, and and we don't want to have a sharp cutoff. So what that means is that we probably want to have a curve in terms of admission to the mempool, where for the first that many megabyte that you can accept very cheap transaction and there is no problem, even maybe some portion of free transaction based on coinage and stuff like that. And once the mempool get a certain size, you need to start raising the fees without evicting anything that you have in the mempool already.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things to think about there. Like, what if, what if we want to increase the mempool size to 1 gigabyte, let's say. How is that going to be done? Does everybody have to have the same mempool size, et cetera, et cetera? Like, there's all these questions, things to think about there. So,
mempool size, the maximum mempool size is a de facto mempool policy. If ADCD for these 300 megabyte, whereas BU is 500, whereas whatever other client have a different one, yeah, there will be problem for 0.1. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, so maybe you don't want to actually have a size for the mempool, but what we can do is making it exponentially more expensive to get into the mempool, for instance.
Yeah.
So at some point you get in a situation where very few people are going to be willing to put transaction in the mempool where it's sufficiently flooded. So there is this kind of option. There is a bunch of options. I don't have like a specific proposal, but if we want to keep ZeroConf secure, we need to do some kind of variation of that. Also, I think there has been a meme in the BCH community that I think is not very good. It's the idea that if you pay like 1 Satoshi per byte, it's always good, and there is never going to be any problem with that. And it's a bit of a dangerous meme because it's essentially price fixing, and we all know, at least anyone that has some economic background knows that price fixing is not the best idea in the world. And so we need to have a very strong commitment to the community that we're going to keep the fee as low as possible, as much as we can. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't have infinite capacity. So if someone wants to do a bunch of transactions, there is always a scenario somewhere down the road where the fee rise or everything stops. Like, that's completely unavoidable. And so we need to choose where those points are and in what condition they trigger. But we should not ignore that and say, okay, we fix, we do price fixing on the fee, and this is always what it's going to be. And when I say it that way, it seems bad because I'm saying like maybe we're going to have higher fee in some situation, but that also means that we can also possibly have lower fees in other situations, right? So it's not. It's not just a negative. There is a positive side to it. So, for instance, when there is not that much load of the network, we should probably be able to accept transaction that have some coinage to prevent any kind of spam. But if your transaction has sufficient coinage, then you probably should be accepting it, even if it pays zero fee. Right? Yep. That's the kind of stuff that we should be able to do, and all of that is part of the same package. It's like different symptoms of the same underlying problem of we process this whole pipeline in the node. So yeah, the deep issue is that right now we accept stuff in the mempool, and we have some policies in there to accept them. And when there is too much stuff in the mempool, we start evicting, and then later down the road, we construct a block template based on the bunch of information about fees and stuff like that to select what subset of the mempool we want to mine. And this whole stuff is completely wrong. This is not this doesn't fit what we want to do with BCH. You'd want to do that at the entry of the mempool, like before things get into the mempool, and not when the mempool is being processed to create the block template. You want that whatever is in the mempool, if it gets into the mempool, you want to know that it's going to get into a block. Yeah.
In principle, low fee transactions might never get into a block if the miners are always mining high fee transactions. The low fee transaction might just sit around forever.
Yeah, but in that case,
that's sort of a weird corner case.
Yeah, in that case, you would like those transactions not to be accepted in the mempool.
Yeah.
Right? And so people are going to tell you, no, I'm not going to accept that transaction because it pays too low of a fee. And then even your wallet could bump the fee. Transparently in the background, there is nothing that user really need to know or see about it, except if the fee maybe gets too high. You want to warn them, hey, there is high fee event right now. But we should expect, if we do our job right, we should expect those events to be, exceedingly uncommon. If they are not exceedingly uncommon, it means that we fucked up something. or
And
that we are so
that-
successful that we cannot keep up with the success, which is another
Yeah.
good problem to have.
Yeah, I think that would be a good symptom of needing to increase the block size, like even if it's
Yeah. So
you know if it's a common event, right? You know,
yeah, if it's a common event, you definitely have a problem. This is a discussion. I don't remember with who I was having this discussion, but we were essentially discussing how do we know what is like an actual transaction that people want to make and what is spam, right? This is a very difficult question because we don't know why people are doing transaction, right? Like we don't have access to that information. We know that people do transaction, and most people, they actually want to move money around for whatever reason that they want to move around. But some people may want to do a large number of transactions just to clog the system, and they don't intend to actually move any money around. And we don't have any good way in like regular time. We don't have any good way to know which is which, right? So we accept it all. But one good way to distinguish between spam and non-spam is that you would expect that with supply and demand, if there is an actual increase in demand, then the price should go up as long as the supply stay the same. And as we say in economics, then the price is like a signal wrapped in an incentive, right? So it creates a signal for the rest of the ecosystem that we need to raise the block size.
Yeah, the supply should go up when the price goes up. Yeah, obviously.
Exactly. But if we see the volume of transaction going up, but the price doesn't move, then that's the good sign that the demand actually hasn't increased that much, and people are just flooding the network.
Okay, I see. I guess we should probably move on. It's already been 45 minutes. So.
I've been waiting to make a comment, so I kind of just wanted to circle back to what Emil was saying, like just to basically make sure that we're all on the same page, like we all want to fix this issue. So this like I think it's not accurate to say that ABC doesn't care about it, or I forget how you phrased it exactly. Like we all want to fix this, and this is like I guess my frustration is something that I've been like for the last year or more. I've been trying to say, oh, why don't we get this developer to work on it, or maybe fund someone, or various other ideas. Like we had meetings with Roger in the summer, and we've been trying to contact Satoshi Dice. It's a bit unclear. I mean, they made some public announcement, but I don't think we've ever talked to them directly. So I don't know. We're all pretty reachable. So we've tried to reach out to whoever, I don't know who's behind Satoshi Dice, but anyway, so that being all that as it may, so I just want to be clear, that ABC does, we care about this issue. It's something that everyone agrees this needs to be solved. So it just seems kind of worrisome. It seems like the path we're going down now is basically potentially divisive, with the BU saying okay, we're gonna just go ahead and do this without any consultation. We have these meetings to talk about these sorts of things. So I just think it's kind of we don't want to get into some kind of disconnect where different people are trying to do different things and just pushing forward without and basically causing all kinds of disruptions. I don't know. I just feel like we've had all these meetings where we've talked about this issue, and I guess from ABC's perspective, and Amaury maybe can say what he thinks too, but we want to actually fix this in a real way, not just have a quick fix or whatever. We want to fix things in a way where it fixes all the other issues at the same time. Also, you're just talking about, doesn't hurt scalability. It doesn't make the code all impossible, complicated and hard to maintain, stuff like that. So,
I think I can try to help you get introduced to Satoshi Dice. I've been talking to Jan at Satoshi Dice a couple of times since our wallet is the biggest wallet in there. So we're the ones that do their customer support basically.
Yeah.
So I can try to make him contact you guys.
Sure, that would be great.
May I add something to that? to what Anthony said. I wouldn't characterize the work that you have done as a quick fix for this problem. I mean, you can't have 100 times efficiency improvement with a quick fix unless you have the very dumb code to start with, you know? And secondly, we are not pushing the change on the mainnet without any tests, or we don't have changed the default in any version of Vue deployed on the mainnet.
Okay.
This is a fact. I mean,
yeah, well, that's good to hear.
As a third point, yeah, there is risk of diminish the reliability of zero-count transactions. But as I said before, people that really want to use the solution that we provide have to test it and assess the probability of being hurt by this deployment. And if they think that after the risk assessment, the risks they are incurring into are bearable for them, they are free to do it. This is it, in my opinion. We are not rushing and pushing anyone to do something that they want to. We are just providing solutions for something that we have perceived like people want to have a need. But we are not forcing anyone. We are not changing the default in ABC. We are not doing anything like that. We are not. We didn't have deployed default in the mempool policy acceptance. This is false. I mean, this is fact that everybody should be agreed on. This is not something debatable, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I guess for me it was kind of unclear because it seemed like it was just announced like on Reddit or something. That
I guess again, if someone have said that we deployed live a change in the mempool acceptance policies, he is wrong. It's not correct. And if I did something along those lines, I apologize, but I don't recall it. It doesn't seem to me that I've done something like that. And at best of my knowledge, nobody else did.
Okay. Okay, that was all I had to say. Yeah, I guess I just feel like we want to actually like I just want to make sure it's clear that like we all want to fix this issue. It's not like we have different goals. Like
I wasn't saying that. I wasn't saying that is not true. Yeah, I mean, if you pay attention to what I said, I never try to estimate ABC willingness of doing that or other thing. I've just described what we have done. Yeah, and I agree that everybody wants to increase those limits, like Amari and you have just said.
Did anyone else want to have a chance to weigh in on this just before we move on to the next item? All right, if we've covered that for this meeting, I guess there's some follow-up that'll be done between individuals in this meeting. We'll move on to the double spend proofs. Can we talk about what work is being done on these and how they fit into the rest of the network pieces? Who would like to tackle this? Somebody put it on the agenda, so I'm sure somebody wants to talk about it.
I know a bit about them, but I haven't been keeping track with the recent work. I don't know. I think they're nice personally. Basically, the double spend proof applies for paid to public key hash inputs. Probably for the most part, maybe for multi-signatures also, but it's restricted to a particular type of transaction input being spent. And if you see two different variations, so the same input being spent in two transactions, you can make a proof and that proof can't then be turned back into a transaction. So the proof doesn't let you reconstruct a second transaction. So there's not going to be like any replace by fee mechanism like you could have with a double spend relay system.
Which
Yeah.
clients will support it? Like, is ABC going to support it?
I'd be interested in working that in principle, but I don't know. I have to take a look to see how much work is involved, because the idea is
also
very
like
nice,
for,
but yeah.
For payment service providers, for example, for them to be able to utilize it properly, it would really help if that was like a channel on ZeroMQ. So if you have a payment service provider, then you can your backend could easily just listen on ZeroMQ for double spends. That would be very, very helpful.
That should be possible, I guess. Yeah. You don't all. Yeah, that's probably something you want as a push notification, right? I guess. Yeah.
So
yeah.
One of the things that should be noted about double spend proofs is that they help in the case where you have a race between two transactions, right? Like you do two transactions roughly at the same time that are double spend on each other. It helps knowing about that. It doesn't help. Maybe I'm looping back a bit in the previous conversation, but it doesn't help in the case where the policies for the mempools are different. Because in that case, then you still have, until a block is found to do something.
It can, but only in a very particular case. So if you have a wallet that it gets a transaction, and then it sees that transaction satisfies all the standardness rules. So the wallet needs to know somehow, like, okay, there's a subset of all the standardness rules of all the nodes. So if the transaction follows all the rules, then okay, in principle, it should be able to go to all the nodes. Then the wallet can wait a few seconds, and if it doesn't see a double spend proof, then it can conclude, okay, the transaction should have propagated to all the nodes, and I think they would have all accepted it. Therefore, this transaction is in all the
not necessarily, right? Say you have a miner that only accept 10 Satoshi per byte transaction instead of one, like most people do right now. Then you can do your transaction and you can wait, 2-3 minutes and do a double spend. And you know that this miner is gonna mine your double spend. So now if that miner has like 20% of the hash
directly,
rate, if that miner has 20% of the hash rate, then you know that you're gonna double spend with a 20% chances of success.
May I say that there is a lot of things that you can do if you have a miner that is try to helping you doing this kind of thing. I mean,
well, in that case, the miner is not even like actively trying to help you, right? It's just
a
different policy that you exploit.
The thing is that you have to partition the network in a way that you have to directly send the transaction to the miner. How could you do it unless there is a direct channel to that miner? How could you be sure that your transaction is just received by the miner and not any other node in the network? I mean,
you could send it, to thousands and thousands of nodes, right? You could send it to every node that you can connect to.
Yeah, and
that miner somehow, somewhere, has an access point to his own network. Otherwise, they could not transmit their blocks.
Yes, and why the other node is not going to accept those GECP transactions in their mempool?
The other node are not gonna do that because of the first in rule, right? So if you do that, you end up in a situation where you can double spend, not with like 100% accuracy, but with like whatever hash rate the miner who has a different policy. Whatever proportion of the hash rate that miners has. And any like I'm using the fee as an example, but any difference in policy led to that similar problem. And I think that if we want to claim that ZeroConf are secure, we need to solve that problem as well. Like this is the actual problem that we need to solve, because really the race one like today, even though we don't have to prove themselves, it's not too difficult for payment processor and merchant and stuff like that to actually know it. You just need to run several nodes that are geographically distributed. So what double spend proof actually do is reducing the cost of doing that. Instead of running 5 to 10 nodes in various locations over the planet, you just need to run one and look for double spend proof. That's the main thing that is achieved. And so when you look at it that way, it's still good, but it's not, it's not incredible. It's not a game changer. I don't see that as a game changer.
Oh, well, it would, yeah, so you can always have a miner that they don't even have to accept transactions by the Bitcoin protocol. They can, they can have a web form where you submit a transaction and it pays 1,000 satoshis per byte, and then they'll mine it, right? Like,
yeah, actually, the transaction
we'll mine your double spend, Yeah.
The
they don't care, right?
Is doing just that.
Yeah.
On BTC,
so they don't. They don't care about whatever's first seen, what their Bitcoin node thinks. They just mine whatever they want. So that's always a threat to any sort of
This is why this is the problem that we need to solve if we want to actually claim that zero conf is secure, and double spend proof are not that.
Yeah. So absolutely, double spend proofs are not a way of making zero conf secure. What they are is it's a way of addressing races and sort of healing if there are different relay rules that the relaying nodes use, that the majority of nodes use, then you can have a notion of like the subset of subsetted transactions that should be universally accepted. And for those, at least you can conclude that there hasn't been one of these weird reverse respend where they first broadcasted on some other set of nodes, like let's say BU has a more permissive policy like this 25 unconfirmed limit. So they first broadcast on the BU, which is more permissive. The ABC nodes reject it, and then they broadcast on the ABC nodes later for the double spend. So if there was a double spend proof, it would let you would first say, okay, I'm not going to accept one of these weird transactions that only BU accepts, like until it's confirmed. First of all, there's that one. I want a transaction that's going to be accepted by everybody. And then if you get a transaction that should be accepted by everybody, you wait, and if you see double spend proof, then okay, that something weird has happened. So it's a very restrictive case where this actually matters.
Yeah, and there is a flip side to that. Is that now your coins are not as fungible as they used to be.
How is that? I heard you mention that before, but I don't.
Because there are some certain scripts that are not super standard as the double spend proof. Like in double spend proof lingo.
The double spend proof will probably only include They'll probably only include public key hash and multi-sig.
Hash and maybe multi-sig. Right? That's it. But also kind of weird script they want. Which means that if I want to buy something, say BitPay adopt this super standard stuff, right? So they want to make sure that they accept zero conf, and they want to make sure that the double spend proof are accepted, and so they want to accept only super standard transaction. Well, then what's going on right now is that my coin that are not P2 key hash and maybe multi-sig, I cannot spend them on BitPay anymore.
But now you are making a double spend proof something that is now a policy or an helper to assess the risk of being double spend. You are just including this kind of criteria in a sort of consensus rules. I mean,
BitPay. You're not saying it's a consensus rule. Yeah.
It's not a consensus rule, but it's what Mark was explaining. It's like if you have difference in policies, then you can make you can only accept super standard transactions And in that case, you know that you are in the set of transactions that everybody is going to accept first in, and for which double spend proof work. And in
I
that
mean,
case,
so in
you have a good
principle,
guarantee of
BitPay should accept any transaction if it's confirmed in principle. But you're right that what might happen is they just start rejecting, not rejecting in the Bitcoin node sense, but like their payment service doesn't recognize valid transactions that are weird, right? They say, okay, well, we're going to refund you the payment because this is a weird script that you're using. Yeah, I guess that's possible, but that's sort of them being lazy that they don't accept confirmed transactions of any sort, right? So I don't know.
But we are saying that I get it what you said, both of you. But if you say that if we deploy double spend, then we have to reject all known superstandard transactions, which is not correct. The double spend proof is an aid for increasing the confidence in a zero confidence transaction, nothing more than this. And it's something else that you.
It's not about. So it's the reason. So let's say you're some merchant, and somebody you give somebody payment requests, and maybe it's like BIP70 or whatever, and then they submit to you this transaction that's weird. It's got this weird smart contract on an input. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, well, I can't possibly have a double spend proof for this transaction if there was a double spend. Therefore, I'm going to have to wait for this one to confirm. But I don't want to wait for this to confirm. And why is this user making me do all this like weird transaction stuff? So I'm just going to tell the user, okay, I reject this transaction. Like, it's not the full node that's doing this. It's the merchant who's saying, I don't like this transaction. This is weird. Why are you doing this weird crap? And come back to me later with a paid to public key hash. And that's basically what Amaury is saying with the fungibility.
Fungibility is not in the eye of the node software. Fungibility is in the eye of the person receiving the payment.
Yeah, if we start from these premises, we are speculating for online payments, double spend is not a matter that much because I have to send you the good, right? So I think that I will realize that you have double spend me long before the package leave my my shop, right? So
yeah,
we are
for many circumstances you anyways can wait for a confirmation.
We are
some cases
about BPay. All that we have said right now is it's an academic exercise that is good to have to actually understand all the details of the double spend and other criteria, but it doesn't apply to actual reality. If you are, on the other hand, paying someone live, face to face, and you are going to release your good as soon as you have the transaction, then you have to pay more attention because the people could steal you the good. But BitPay, it's something that double spend. Well, what we have said right now is, it applies, but there is other thing, like I wait before sending you the package until I get 10 confirmation, 100, whatever,
So you actually wrap it up very well. I think I think we are in violent agreement actually, but I'm not sure this is reflected in how double spend proof are understood. In many situations, 10 minutes is an acceptable time frame, for accepting a payment. Like if I'm buying something on Amazon, it's not gonna show up at my door within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna show up at my door the next day or 2 days after or something like that. And so in that case,
sometimes it takes 3 hours for a confirmation.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like this kind of time frame is just fine if I'm buying something on Amazon that's gonna be shipped to my house because the shipment is way slower than that anyway. But in the case where we are in person, then we need to have stronger guarantee. before a block is found, because we're not gonna wait in front of each other for 10 minutes.
Agree.
And where I'm, where I'm questioning how important the double spend proof are and how much effort we need to put into that is that it's not actually helping that much in that specific scenario.
I guess that we, on the flip side, there is no need for actual coordination. I mean, it's not a consensus changes.
No, that's fine. Yes.
If enough nodes on the network implement a protocol that is shared, we are just providing a face-to-face merchant to increase their reliance on the process. That's it. I mean, I could be a merchant as soon as I see a P2SH transaction, a strange script in the input, whatever. I'm not going to sell you anything. I want to just sell you something if you have this kind of output. That's it. This is my policy. You could go and buy something somewhere else. So if we are increasing the reliability of the process of selling goods for those kind of merchants, why not? I mean, I don't see any disadvantages.
But then it looked back to what Mark and I were saying. If the merchant is like, I'm gonna accept only this subset of transactions, because the coins are already locked into a specific script, you cannot choose by the point
Yeah, well, guys, we are talking about,
change it ex post facto, and so as a result,
I
you have a
agree.
fungibility problem.
I have a fungibility problem for the time that it takes to found the next block. I don't see it as a major thing. And if, we have this kind of problem actually even without double spend proof.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
yes.
It seems like that we have found a scapegoat and we have just throwing everything that doesn't work right now over. I mean, the fungibility.
I'm not sure I agree
The
with
fungibility thing is stretched, in my opinion. This is it. Because even right now, I get what you meant. My coins, if are not spendable through a superstandard transaction, for certain merchants are different than coins that is possible to spend on those kind of transactions. And this is the definition of non-fungible money. But I mean, this is not forever. This is not the only output that I can spend, probably. So if I'm going to take a coffee or buy a coffee from some places, and I know that there is this kind of limitation, I will behave accordingly, and I'm going to buy this coffee with the right kind of output, or I'll wait for 10 minutes, whatever it is. I don't know. If I'm going to buy a car or something else, well, I guess then we move to all other consideration. But for something like that, I don't know. It seems like that we are just reiterating problems that we already had, independently from the fact that we are going to deploy or not double spend proof.
And in the interest of time, because we are going to run short here, I wonder if we could just get some final comments on this and move on to the next item.
So actually, contrary to maybe what people would have got from this conversation, I'm not against double spend proof, but I just want to make sure that the expectations are right, because I feel when I read what people are saying and writing on the internet about double spend proof, that the expectations are not what double spend proof can actually deliver. And there is some limitation and there is some risk, even though they are not very high. I would agree with that, but mostly there are some limitation that make it not essentially. It makes stuff that we can detect already today cheaper to detect and easier to detect. That's what it does, but it doesn't really increase the security of 0.1%.
In the interest of time, I'm going to cut this short now and welcome further discussion at our next meeting, which might be sooner rather than later. I want to move on to the next item, which is the series of potential items for the next upgrade. Rather than taking them individually, I'll just list them off and see where the discussion goes, because I'm aware that Tyler is sitting patiently for the avalanche discussion, and well, thank him for that. But let's just talk about the SIGOPS counting improvements, Merklich's tree, new op codes, mull, reverse op roll, and bigger integers. So who would like to start this off? I think I saw Anthony's name beside this.
Oh.
Yeah, I can talk about SIGOPS.
Oh, sure. Why don't you start off then,
yeah.
Mark? Thank you.
Yes. So if anyone doesn't know about the SIGOPS rule, it's like it's an old rule that Satoshi introduced when he introduced some limits, like the script size limits, some other limits at the same time. But basically, it was to defend Bitcoin against malicious transactions that had a lot of check sig cryptographic operations, because those are quite expensive in CPU time. But unfortunately, the mechanism he came up with, which is called SIGOPS, is really weird. There are so many weird corner cases, you really just have to look at the code, how it works. I don't think I even know them all, but basically it just scans a script and it tries to estimate how many times it calls this check sig operation or check multi-sig, and it makes a guess of how many times that's actually going to result in a cryptographic operation. And it does it, sometimes it does it in the wrong block when the operation doesn't actually happen. So it's very weird. And it would be nice to have a better counting mechanism to prevent too many signature checking operations from being done in a given block, because we still want to stop this CPU exhaustion attack.
So,
And
Mark, would you see
so
this
the simplest way to do this is,
Sorry, I was
yeah,
gonna say,
go
do you
ahead.
see this as a potential item for the next upgrade?
Yes, yes. So for the next upgrade, what we could do is we could introduce a new mechanism where it just, as it executes a script, it actually looks at how many times the signature checking operation gets run, or how many times it's potentially run. Maybe there's slightly different ways we could do it, but a much more accurate way. And I have some ideas on how to do this. I've been researching this actually for a few months, and I've looked at past transactions on the blockchain to see how many of these operations they do. And I think I have an idea for a good mechanism to do it. So I think probably I'll just write something up and share it with everybody rather than explain all the details here.
Great.
There'll be some nice graphs.
Yeah, can I?
But
Okay, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Oh, I wanted to interject just because I think that people are gonna wonder, like, what do we want to change this obscure protocol parameter that really nobody knows about or care about?
Sure.
And there are two major reasons. One is that as we grow the size of the network and as we process more transactions, we need to have a more accurate idea of how expensive the block reproduce and all of that are going to be. Because otherwise someone can produce a stupidly expensive block or stupidly expensive transaction that end up not having a very high SIGOPS count, because as Mark mentioned, the way SIGOPS count work is by making guesses about how many, and it gets it often very wrong. There are ways to get the guess very wrong. And so you can create absurdly expensive stuff that are not going to have a very high SIGOPS count. And so that's a denial of service attack that is possible there on the network. And the bigger we grow and the worse those kind of problem gets, right? So if you want to say, stay with a 1 megabyte block size limit, maybe, that's not that big of a deal actually. But as you grow, all this kind of problem grows with, the scale of the network. And so what is an okay problem, not that bad, maybe it's going to be bad once in a while, become like a huge problem as we become huge. So that's one of the reasons. And the second reason is that the rule that we have right now create a limit that is, makes steps essentially. Like for each megabytes of block, we have a certain number of SIGOPS. that we can have. And it creates a very bizarre optimization problem for the miner to produce blocks. Because what happened is that maybe you have like 10 megabytes of transaction, and within the first megabyte of transaction, you run into the SIGOPS limit. So the code is gonna say, okay, I cannot add any more transaction in there because I'm at the SIGOPS limit. But maybe if it added many more transaction, it would get into 2 megabyte or 3 megabyte territory. And because the transaction that it would have later has not that many SIGOPS, then it would be okay because now the SIGOPS limit would be higher. And this kind of optimization problem are actually like very well-known problem in computer science, and they are notoriously difficult to get right. It's almost impossible to write correct solutions that are not gonna explode in like exponential or factorial time. And so the solution to this kind of problem really usually are making like educated guess on what things look like and whatever, but it creates possibility for people to purposefully produce transaction that those educated guess for which those educated guess are wrong, right? And in which case miners are gonna start producing stupid blocks that are way too small compared to the demand or whatever. So there are various ways to exploit that behavior, and the way to do it correctly is, I don't know, like exponential or factorial time or something stupid that we it's just we don't want to do. So the correct way to move on with that is actually change the way we account SIGOPS properly.
Yeah.
And this is what Mark is proposing and going to bring forward.
Yeah. So I have an idea on how to do it. That's going to be like quite low impact. I don't think anybody will be affected in any application unless they're doing like a bare multi-signature that has an absurdly high number of public keys, but nobody does that actually. Like I've looked on the blockchain, it's never been done. Right now it's non-standard anyways, but it's interesting to see what people have actually done compared to what's possible. And yeah, there's certain things that people have just never done. So
great, thank you, Mark. I'm just going to cut you off right now, just to let you know that Tyler has agreed to defer discussion of Avalanche to the next meeting. So that gives us a little bit of extra time to go over any of the other 4 items or 3 items with regard to the upgrade potentials. Does anyone want to speak to Merkle's tree, new opcodes, or bigger integers?
Well, I can say a bit about, I've been in touch a bit with the various folks, and I know things like some of these opcodes are of interest to people. I don't know if anyone's seriously looking into working on them, but
okay.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to get like a more overall strategy for how we deal with script and if changes to it, but things like mul or reverse up roll seem like they're a good idea, but I don't know. As far as I know, no one's actually working on getting that into the upgrade. So that's about all I know about it.
Okay. Anything with regard to the Merkle's tree or the bigger integers?
I guess I just have questions about Merkle's tree. Like, it's conceptually very nice. I'm curious, like how much effort people like maybe I'll ask Amaury, like how much effort do you think that would be? And like it seems like if we're gonna do that, it would be nice to get it in.
So I expected the effort to be pretty high, but after talking with a few people that run wallet backends, I was expecting the biggest impact would be on wallet backends. But it turns out that the way most wallet backends are done, it's actually not as hard as I expected. So
it would basically have
maybe, but activating that, it's gonna be like it's a bit of a running gag, but we don't have quite the resources I think to make that happen.
Yeah.
And even if we had, I think there are stuff like the 25 transaction limit that seems to be more wanted in general. So if we had the resources, I would rather put them on that.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Omri. And thank you, Anthony. Anybody want to talk about bigger integers at all?
Well, I don't. I just know that it's a script thing that like people are maybe interested in, but as far as I know, I don't know if anyone's looking into it seriously. So conceptually, it's kind of simple, but yeah, just all the details. Like I don't know. I guess I just put those two things on the agenda because just wanted to raise awareness about it. But I don't. As far as I know, no one's actually working on it.
Sure, and they're listed as potential items, so I think that's important to take into account as well. If there's no further need for discussion on those items.
Regarding the big integers, I just want to point out the reason why it's on the list is some of the smart contract guys, they're working with these covenants and they do 64-bit amounts, like the amount field in a transaction. And script is limited to 32 bits, so there are all these annoying restrictions. There's like tricks you can do to work around it, but it's uncomfortable. So it'd be nice to have 64-bit integers in script. That seems reasonable. The only issue I can see is if we introduce optimal, then the way arithmetic opcodes work in Bitcoin is they can they never overflow on the output. So a multiplication has to support up to a 128-bit output size, which may be awkward for some implementations. These days, probably not, but I mean, a lot of computers support 128-bit integers now, so it should be fine. But that's just one little snag to watch out for. So,
okay.
Otherwise, I think it would be clear.
So the purpose of the bigger integers is to basically address the scripting items that are going on.
Yeah, it just makes life a bit easier.
For sure. Got to keep those.
There are other things we could do to make it even easier for them, like making these covenants not have to use check data sig, this weird check data sig trick that people are using. If they could just do direct covenants with some new opcode, that would make their life much, much easier. But that's more complicated, more opcodes.
So we're optimistic that there will be something attempted to be put together for the next upgrade then.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It sounds like Big Ops is the only one that's anyone is actually planning to work on for sure. So yeah.
Okay.
These other ones, those are all ones. I like those things that are listed under the script, like mul, reverse uproll, and bigger integers are kind of the ones that the script folks are actually running into as issues. So.
Yeah.
Okay. With that in mind, we're reaching the end of our approximate 1 hour and a half meeting. A lot of information was covered and a lot of good takeaways for people to think about and work on before the next meeting. Is there any are there any questions from the audience? I haven't seen any come up yet. Just want to make sure we give people a chance if they did have any questions. Click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you do have a question. And I'm not seeing anything coming up, so anybody else want to have any sort of final words on things? I'll just throw it open to the panelists.
Well, I'd just say that I have pasted almost half an hour ago the URL for the code made by the part made by Peter Chipper for the Chula Pay for Power and new code to ABC in the group chat, so that if you want to have a look.
Great. I'll make sure that's included in the notes for the video presentation from this meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
For that. Anything else from anyone here? Okay, with that in mind, I think we're going to terminate this meeting. And thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting, and hopefully we'll get a few more clarifications on the important issues for the next meeting. So thanks again.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.